Good afternoon, Marcus. We see you online. Can you hear us? Marcus? Hello? Marcus? If you can hear us, please respond. Marcus, can you hear us? Hello? Hello, Marcus. This is the interpreter. Can you hear me now? I am on the English channel. Marcus, please confirm if you can hear the interpreter.
Yeah, now I can hear you. Now I can hear you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, dear participants of the third online session, Barents Arctic region versus coronavirus. I'm very happy to welcome you from Murmansk. We have a very interesting event before us. We are definitely taking up a very international subject, which is relevant to everyone. It's hard to find anyone who has been affected by the pandemic, but life goes on, and we will today see what the situation is like in Russia, Sweden, Finland, and Norway, the countries that are united within the Barents Arctic region. And I think the main task for us is to look into the future and see how we are going to build our lives after the pandemic. But first, some housekeeping information. We have two working languages, Russian and English. So you should choose the relevant language that you will be using. So usually the Russian speakers choose Russian, and our partners from the Nordic countries should choose the English channel. And please remember to mute your microphone when you're not speaking. And since we're all ready, I'm very happy to see all of you. And it is my pleasure to give the floor to the governor of the Murmansk region, Andrey Chibis. Good afternoon, dear friends. I would like to thank everyone who, despite their everyday challenges, has found the time to meet us. Our previous meeting took place in the autumn. We then discussed the situation with the pandemic at that time, and a lot has changed since then, and I believe it is useful for us to exchange information on the current situation and discuss the measures that have been taken but also it's important not just to talk about the COVID, but also about the possibilities for developing our cooperation despite the pandemic. So I'm very happy to see my colleagues, and I hope that this session, just like the previous ones, will be useful for all of us. And we really appreciate the experience of our Barents partners, of what they have done in regard to the pandemic that we are all facing in our lives. Thank you very much, Andrey Vladimirovich. And now I would like to give the floor to Andrey Petrovich, representing the Second European Department of the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to welcome all of you and greet you from Moscow, representatives of so many regions and 4 countries, participants of Barents cooperation. Of course, I would like to thank for the organization of this international online session, Barents Against Coronavirus, the 3rd session. I would like to thank Andrey Chibis, the governor of Murmansk region. Thanks to his energy and initiative, this meeting is taking place. And the meaning of multinational cooperation in this part of the Arctic is very difficult to overestimate. Barents cooperation is universally recognized as a very successful dialogue format in the north of Europe. And we believe that initiative of Murmansk region in exchange of experience in the combat of the new infection and joint measures, timely and important. Already a year we have been living in the pandemic conditions and the restrictions. In this time, the session has proven to be efficient forum, bringing together a wide range of participants to find the right responses to the challenges. These joint efforts promotes Barents cooperation as a model of mutually beneficial cooperation in the scale of the big Arctic and makes a contribution in promotion of the cross-border connections. In spite of the pandemic restrictions, our cooperation continues to develop practically in all key spheres, including health, transportation, environment protection, forest, and dialogue among young people and indigenous peoples. A large number of events that have taken place online is a big confirmation to that. And the region has built traditions of mutual help and good neighborhood and unprecedented level of transboundary links. The unique 2-level structure of Barents cooperation helps identify promising projects and response to the needs of specific regions. The key events of the region is the 18th ministry session of BEAC and Barents Regional Council, scheduled for late October in Tromsø. At this meeting, the outcomes of the work in these 2 years will be concluded under chairmanship of Norway and Västerbotten in coordinating of the national and regional work. The informal working structure, the so-called transition team, has been built to arrange the transition of chairmanship from Norway to Finland and from Västerbotten to Nenets Autonomous Okrug in the regional council. To my knowledge, the first meeting has taken place, and an important task is to improve financial cooperation. Currently, we are working with our BEAC partners to launch our own financial mechanisms for the Barents region in 2022. Our common goal is to make the multilateral cooperation in this part of the Arctic still more efficient and diverse. Based on the situation, it is important to maintain good dialogue, and today's session is absolutely relevant to that. I'm sure that this event will promote fruitful practical interaction in the European Arctic and enhancement of the life of people here. I hope that Barents cooperation in the nearest years will be still better, more dynamic in the atmosphere of trust, stability, and good neighborhood. Thank you for your attention, and I wish your session good luck. Thank you. Thank you very much, Sergey, for these welcoming remarks. Indeed, I think after that, this session will be fruitful, and we pass on to the second part of the discussion of the COVID situation. And of course, we will have an opportunity for all speakers to tell what exactly is going on in this historical moment in your county, in your region, and tell about the specific measures that you might be taking, maybe what kind of vaccination campaign is going on. And please note that we have a time limit of 4 minutes for each speaker. Let us give everybody an opportunity to deliver a speech, and the governor of Murmansk region, Andrey Chibis, will start.
Well, thank you once again. The last time we spoke, since the last time we spoke, since our previous session, as of today, we have seen a threefold reduction in the daily incidence rates of the infection. And that has made it possible for us to ease the burden on our health personnel and reduce the number of beds that are occupied by COVID patients, and we can now treat regular diseases. And we are also seeing a steady trend for decrease in the number of infections since mid of December. So we went into New Year with a high level of optimism, which was quite justified, because we basically allowed public events, public outdoor events like fairs. So we were able to have New Year and Christmas celebrations without any major restrictions. And secondly, we were also able, in the end of last summer, we allowed the operation of tourism businesses with some restrictions, but during New Year holidays, thanks to a number of support measures and thanks to some cashback programs, we saw a 10% increase in the number of tourists to the Murmansk region compared to pre-COVID 2019 to 2020 New Year. And so thanks to this growth in tourist numbers, we are seeing a restoration of small and medium-sized businesses in tourism and services, which were most hardly hit by the pandemic. And when we analyze what made it possible for us to reduce the incidence rates, first of all, we had mass-scale testing for COVID. And when COVID was identified, we test up to 8 contacts of a person in his or her immediate circle. So, and we are in Russia, we are taking the 7th place in terms of testing per 100,000 people. So this testing program made it possible for us to quickly respond to the threat. And the second thing we did is that we introduced SMS notification so people were notified via SMS in 12 to 16 hours after they were tested. So, and that covers most of the region except maybe for remote settlements. And that so basically we immediately notified people if they had the infection, and that and by law, then people were obliged to go into self-isolation and cut all their contacts with the outside world, and thus stop the spread of the infection. And at the same time, we also had an increased acceleration of provision of services to such people in terms of providing free medicines. As I said at the previous session, we started our medicine distribution program since last July. And so by reducing the notification time and by providing providing the medicines, we were able to significantly reduce the number of infections since mid-December. And we believe these were very effective measures. And given that after the first wave of the pandemic that we saw last spring, and thanks to the experience that we had at the world's largest construction site in Belokamenka, we were able to prepare our healthcare staff and make a sufficient number of beds, hospital beds available, and sufficient number of personnel. We had more than 7,000 health personnel involved in COVID treatment and COVID operations. So, and thanks to that, when we had another increase in the autumn, we were able to avoid more restrictions. So we were able to keep the restaurants open and not to close our schools. So basically, in terms of our social infrastructure, in terms of food industry, restaurants, and so on, they were able to operate in more or less regular mode through the past year. And we were also able to avoid mass hospitalizations thanks to providing medicines at home. And we have managed to build quite an immunity, and based on the observations that we've had, more than 30% of the population of the region now have immunity to the disease. So we do have this layer of people who are immune, and we managed to do that thanks to avoiding introducing the introduction of heavy restrictions during the second wave of the pandemic. And we started lifting the restrictions since December. And as a result, or the result of this year is that we managed to keep our economy stable, given the support that our small and medium-sized businesses received, and it was more than 5,000 companies and individual entrepreneurs, and they were done in several waves in the autumn and during by New Year holidays. So we see that despite the challenges, small and medium-sized businesses feel quite okay. Of course, there are some of them that were severely impacted by the pandemic, but the majority of businesses have now restored their activities, and because we didn't close any large industrial projects, large construction sites, we even received extra revenues, which we have now distributed towards social expenditure, towards hospitals, towards upgrading our road infrastructure. And of course, our key task now is to ensure mass-scale vaccination. We have vaccinated already more than 30,000 people, and this is organized quite well, and it is timed to the delivery of the vaccines. So, as I said, as we have vaccinated more than 30,000 people by now, and we are continuing this. People can sign up for the vaccination either by calling their clinic or via or do it online. And this online registration for vaccination is very popular, given that we very high internet penetration rate. And of course, our assumption is that the immunity that 30% of the people already have, and the mass scale vaccination that is now organized, plus the precautions that we are still keeping, that is wearing masks and disinfections, and a 25% limit for occupancy of public spaces such as movie theaters, and so on. So thanks to this, we really hope that we will not need to introduce any more restrictions, but rather we will be able to gradually lift the restrictions that we still have here in the Murmansk region. And of course, on the 9th of May, we will be celebrating Victory Day. And this year, it will be celebrated on the 9th of May. It won't be postponed because according to our doctors, we see their forecasts and we see the current picture. We see that the situation is quite stable, both in terms of the number of new diseases and in terms of the number of people that need to be hospitalized. Of course, this is not a reason to sit back and relax, and because we are monitoring the situation in other countries which have had to introduce more restrictions, and therefore we continue to have our healthcare services on the alert, so that to be able to respond to the pandemic in a swift manner. So we've learned to deal with different scenarios, but the range of measures that we have implemented during this past year, since the March 16 last year. So on the one hand, we've been able to reduce the number of COVID patients. And secondly, we've been able to maintain our economy and even have some economic growth despite some difficult times last year. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Andrey Vladimirovich, for your very detailed presentation. And I assume it gives our partners a very clear picture of what is happening in the Murmansk region and the positive developments that we see, and we see that the figures give us a reason to be optimistic, but we also understand that it's too early to relax, and we have to be ready for any development. And we will now see what the situation is like at our partners, and we'll start with the province of Northern Ostrobothnia. And I would like to give the floor to Paul Lichariu, the governor of North Ostrobothnia. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Governor, that you invite us to discuss about this very important matter. It's important to all of us. We Finns love numbers and we keep distance. And I give you some numbers about what coronavirus situation in Finland it's at the moment. We have reported cases in whole Finland. You have to remember that we have 5.5 million inhabitants. We have about 75,000 cases. And tested samples in totally 3.9 million and 5.5 million inhabitants. And cumulative numbers of reported deaths associated with the disease, it's only 820. It means that we have had very good luck, but it's not because of the luck, because we keep these distances against each other. And some numbers about patients in the intensive care, which is quite critical in Finland. It has been between 40 and 60. And what about in my region? Last Friday, Last 14 days, we have only 130 cases. Today, it's much lower. It's decreasing quite rapidly. But if you compare it to the southwest Finland, there's 10 times more. And especially in Helsinki area, it's 40 times more cases. And our Finnish problem is situated in Helsinki area. The numbers, the whole northern Finland, the numbers of incidences are much more. They are not so big that in the southern part of that or the western part of the Finland. And some words about what we have done, recommendation and restrictions, and they are forced in our region until 24th of April. And it means that the numbers of participants in both indoor and outdoor events limited to 6 persons. Public spaces shall be closed. Restaurants and bars are closed. Mask recommendations over 11 years old, and all recreational group activities for over 18 years old shall be stopped. Upper secondary schools, vocational education institutes, and all this kind of institutes, they are working, but they have mask recommendation. Universities and applied science universities, they are distant learning, and also the public sector recommendation, it's distant working at the moment. And that's why I'm here. I'm working in my home. What about vaccination? Our Oulu region, it's the youngest one in Finland, and Finnish vaccination progress started from the elderly people. And the figures in Finland, it's 14.6%. At the moment, it's more than 15% of the whole population. Almost everyone over 18 years, they are vaccinated. But in our area, these figures are only 12%. And it's because we have so young inhabitants in our area, and we get this vaccinated until June if all these calculations are right, and we get this vaccination material from abroad. This kind of figures, this kind of situation we have. My colleagues, they will tell more about what does it mean in real life, what kind of activities we have with businesses, what does it affect to the public healthcare or public economy. But thank you for your invitation to discuss about this matter and share this information with each other. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harju. Yes, we know about our Finnish partners that distance is important for you, and we hope that the measures that you are taking are helpful in preventing bad scenarios. And I am granting the floor to Lars Lustig, Deputy Governor of Västerbotten, Sweden.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to Governor Chibis for initiating and hosting this session. My presentation today consists of 4 parts. Firstly, spread of infection. Secondly, effects on society. Thirdly, vaccination. And fourth and finally, the supervision task. First, spread of infection in Västerbotten. we have a continued high spread of infection and a serious situation in Västerbotten, even though the number of new cases has decreased in recent weeks. Västerbotten still maintains a high rate of infection testing. We also see a high proportion of the British virus that contributes to spread the infection in Västerbotten. Isolated cases of the South African virus have been detected during analysis. A small decrease in the number of patients with COVID in hospital, both in the ward and in intensive care, has occurred. Infection tracing shows that the most common context where people have been infected is workplaces, including schools, in families and social private context, where some cases are linked to the school's winter holiday. An expansion of COVID sites has taken place in our hospitals. Compliance is generally considered high, despite increased spread of infection can be found. Secondly, effects on society. The close border with our neighbor countries has had a negative impact both on tourism and trade, but now there is some opening ahead. There is also risk of impaired quality of education in schools due to adaptations and reduced teaching time, not least for the upper secondary schools, vocational training. Economic consequences for culture and tourism are also a reality due to restrictions and regulations. We also see social consequences due to prolonged isolation with, among other things, increased mental illness, increased abuse, and domestic violence, unsafe home environments for children and young people. Thirdly, the vaccination. About 35,000 people have received dose 1 in Västerbotten and about 15,000 dose 2. So far, the changes in delivery plans for the vaccine have had a negative impact in an already strained situation. Last week, the mass vaccination centers in Umeå and Skellefteå, our two major cities, opened. Voluntary organizations provide support. The county administrative board, where I work, continues to participate in various meetings and networks where the vaccination issue is discussed to capture the need for support and also supports in different types of communication efforts. One example is support with translation to the most common foreign languages. We have held an information meeting with the religious communities in the county and will shortly hold another one. Fourth and final, supervision. The county administrative board have conducted 400 supervisory operations in shops, malls, and restaurants so far. Supervision takes form of both administrative supervision and supervision visits on site. And there I stop and over again to the moderator, Mr. Erofeev. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lustig. And we will now move back to Russia. I would like to give the floor to Yuri Bezdudny, the governor of Nenets Autonomous Okrug. So, Mr. Bezdudny, what's the situation in your region? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, participants of this session, I represent the Nenets Autonomous Okrug, the town of Naryan-Mar, the pearl of the Arctic. And indeed, coronavirus has come later. Rather than to the large metropolis, and we are learning to treat these cases. The health system is prepared, and we register the decline of the numbers of cases, and we are using the released vacant beds for other purposes. However, we keep in reserve the number of beds, and if the situation is worse, we are prepared to work hard. We have tested a lot, and that allowed us to identify many cases at a certain period of time. But currently we focus not only on testing and not so much on testing rather than on vaccination. I would like to emphasize that even in spite of the low population in the region, currently we already have vaccinated 20% of the people who are eligible to vaccination, except for young people under 18, I mean. And we do not stop at that. And we are in a good position because in our country today, 3 vaccines already are available, efficient and tested ones, so that we can use them. And we go on with vaccinating. And by the time when the holiday season comes in summer and a considerable portion of the population is leaving the region, we will have vaccinated at least half of the whole population. At least this is our ambition. Also, I would like to emphasize what impact the virus and pandemic has done to the society. Today, our economy is totally open. All companies of small and medium business are open. Cafes and restaurants are operating, also entertainment. So we work and live in our common usual conditions with cinemas, restaurants, beauty salons. And we don't see any hard impact on the small business because the measures that we have been applying were pointed, and even last year we allowed all of these companies to work. And currently, considering the number of people who already have been sick or who have been vaccinated, we understand that at some point we can expect soon the collective herd immunity. Generally, our okrug is an active participant of the Barents cooperation. This November, we are taking over chairmanship in the Barents Regional Council. And in the course of a long time, beginning from 2011, the okrug has been successfully cooperating with the University Hospital of North Norway in the sphere of electronic health. And in 2020, jointly with our Norwegian partners, we launched another 3-year plan for innovations in the Russian healthcare in the Arctic. And it is very interesting, especially now in the pandemic period, when the interaction between a patient and a doctor could be ensured by telemedicine means. In conclusion, I would like to thank Andrey Chibis for invitation to this session, and I believe it is important to support his initiative of the Barents Youth Forum after the pandemic period. Thank you very much. Dear Yuri, thank you very much for the detailed account of the events in your region and for the support of Murmansk region's initiatives. And we go on looking at the situation with coronavirus in the Barents Euro-Arctic region. And I would like to grant the floor to Mika Riipi, the governor of Lapland, Finland. Thank you.
Thank you, dear colleagues in the Barents area. Governor Chibis, thank you once again about arrangements of this third COVID time meeting. I sincerely find it extremely valuable in order to maintain Barents collaboration in these unordinary times. The COVID situation here in Lapland is quite stable, and actually it has been stable whole pandemic time. During the pandemic, there's been tested only 700 positive COVID cases in Lapland. And in that number, there is also a tourist inside. So situation is and has been very much under control here in Lapland. Vaccinations have developed in Lapland with the national vaccination plan. Currently, about 18% of the population of Lapland is vaccinated by first dose. And currently, we are vaccinating elderly people over 70 years old, and to those people who have higher risk to get a severe COVID disease. It is estimated that in April we can start vaccinating working age population, and in the national level there's been discussion and announcement that in the end of June or July all of the population have had the first dose of vaccination. From an economical perspective, Lapland has suffered a pandemic quite much. And that's because, of course, the role of the international tourism and the closing of our land borders. Tourism inside the Finland national tourism has increased a lot, but it can't replace the amount of international tourism. Luckily, same time, our heavy industry here in Lapland, forestry, mining, and metallurgy, have survived well and actually invested in their businesses. In fact, 1 month ago, there was announcement over €1 billion investment in the city of Kemi, where a company called Metsäfibre is building a new biorefinery, and that gets a lot of hope to recovery of our economy here in Lapland. From a Lapland's perspective, it is crucial that in Finland and international level, they should prepare common rules for traveling and entering a country. After pandemic, there's a lot of pressure to travel, and we believe that Lapland and actually the whole Barents area are very interesting destinations because of our sparse population and safety. To conclude, I'd like to once again highlight the importance of the dialogue and change of information here in the Barents area. Most important lesson learned from this pandemic is that we need more regional coordination. We need more regional jurisdiction also, so that the regional operating environment can be better taken into account in the national level restriction policies. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ripi. I agree with you that we need to coordinate efforts not only within just one country, but also internationally. And this is exactly what we're doing now in discussing some unified approaches to the situation that we're all facing despite where we live. And I would like to give the floor to the governor of the Swedish province of Norrbotten, Lotta Finstorp. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. First, I would like to thank Murmansk region for this initiative and the invitation to this important meeting. I started as governor in Norrbotten in February, and I'm pleased to have this chance to meet you all and get right into the important Barents cooperation. In Norrbotten, we are still struggling with the pandemic situation. The number of people tested positive for the virus is still too high. Last week, the week 11, we had 393 new cases per 100,000 inhabitants. And that is a little higher than the national average in Sweden. Even though a lot of people still are infected by the coronavirus, the number of people dying with COVID-19 is decreasing, thanks. And that is thanks to vaccination, and that we are now better at treating people seriously ill in COVID-19. The pressure on the hospitals is still high, and we now have about 30 patients in hospitals due to COVID-19. When it comes to restrictions, we are following the new pandemic law in Sweden. In connection to this pandemic law, the government has introduced several restrictions. For example, no more than 8 people may be present at a public gathering or public event. In shops, gyms, indoor sports facilities, each person must have 10 square meters of space. Furthermore, restaurants are not allowed to serve food and beverages after 8 o'clock in the evening. Takeaway from the restaurants is still allowed. Beside the pandemic law, we have also recommendations. One of these recommendations is that everyone who can work from home should do that. We are still badly affected by restrictions concerning our national borders. Cross-border commuting for work, retail, trade in border regions, and international tourism are examples of border problems during the pandemic. The restrictions and recommendation do, of course, affect people's lives and trade and industry. To combat the consequences for the trade and industry, there are several kinds of financial support to companies. The vaccination has started and are already saving lives. We are following the national vaccination strategy, which means that we are starting with the oldest people and step by step inviting younger age groups to vaccination. 90% of the population over 90 years are vaccinated. 50% in the age of group 80 to 89 years old are vaccinated. We are now starting to offer vaccine to everyone in the age group 75 to 79 years old. We believe that everyone over 65 years old will be fully vaccinated in June. We also hope to have given 1 dose of the vaccine to most of the rest over 18 years old before July. To conclude, the pandemic is certainly not over yet. Too many are still getting COVID-19, and people's lives are affected by different kinds of restrictions and recommendations. Some business sectors, like for example restaurants and tourist companies, are still suffering from the situation. To end with optimism, we can see that the overall economic situation is not that bad. The vaccination campaign is going on and are already giving good results. Vaccination in combination with the coming summer hopefully means that we can go back to a more normal situation in just a few months from now. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lotta Finstorp. In the beginning of your speech, you said that you came to this position in February. So on behalf of all the participants, we wish you good luck and success in this position, because the challenges that you have to face, of course, you will overcome and manage them, those that we have to face now, everyone. And now we are coming down to Norway, in particular in Troms and Finnmark. Bjørn Inge Mo, the chairman of the county government, Troms and Finnmark.
Thank you. Dear Barents friends, as mentioned in our previous 2 webinars, there are unique circumstances in our region that impact our health services. North Norway is characterized by sparsely populated, good but mostly small hospitals and huge distances. Therefore, major outbreaks of the pandemic may have huge consequences for our health emergency preparedness. In general, there have so far been few cases of COVID-19 in North Norway, except a few more extensive outbreaks in, for example, Tromsø and Harstad, our 2 largest towns. Here is the municipalities have done a great job to defeat the outbreaks by following up a common national strategy involving testing, isolation, contact tracing, quarantine. The measures have been strengthened on suspicion of mutated virus. As the 28th of March, it's only registered 7 deaths in North Norway. In Norway is the number 656. In some areas of Norway, very strong restrictions have been introduced due to outbreaks of the mutated coronavirus. The county medicinal officer in Troms and Finnmark has recently published recommendation to people who plan on visiting our county during Easter to have a voluntary 10 days quarantine before departure. Moreover, all Eastern tourists from areas with a high number of COVID cases are asked to take a rapid test no longer than 24 hours before departure. A new test on day 5 in the municipality they are visiting. The general national social distancing rule is now changed from 1 to minimum of 2 meters, except members of your own household. All unnecessary travel should be cancelled. Only 2 guests are allowed, and if it's possible, everyone is encouraged to work from home. As the 22nd of March in Troms and Finnmark, 22,271 exactly, which is about 4% of the population, are vaccinated with the first shot, and 11,728 persons in the second shot. By and large, the elderly about 25 years of age are fully vaccinated, and steady growing number of health workers in municipalities and hospitals too. The Norwegian pharmaceutical authorities have to put the AstraZeneca vaccine on hold, waiting for more true investigations into a possible connection between the vaccine and several unexpected deaths. This leads to a temporary delay in the vaccine program. 4 different vaccines are now approved by the European Medicines Agency, used also in Norway, but there is clearly a need for more vaccines. It is therefore of great importance that 2 more vaccines now are being tested, among them the Sputnik vaccine. So I do hope the Sputnik vaccine soon will be available also in the whole of Europe and in Norway. More vaccines will contribute to a fully vaccinated population, also in Norway. Clearly, vaccines are the key element of the efforts to go back to a more normal way of life. In the meantime, the authorities have introduced a row of measures to compensate Norwegian enterprises for loss of revenue caused by restrictions. Here are some examples. Up to 28% ongoing fixed cost can be covered. Payment of taxes and fees can be postponed. Expenses to organize training of employees due to the major change can be granted. These changes can, for example, to change to the production in a new direction or to establish the enterprises in new markets. For employees, measures have been taken to adapt rules and regulations to the needs of various groups of workers during the pandemic. The number of family care leave days has been increased. Temporary change in the sick leave benefits have been introduced. The unemployed benefits has been adjusted. Finally, I would like to underline that I appreciate the innovation to address these vitally important issues with my Barents colleagues. However, I do look forward to meeting you all in person. Hopefully, it's not too distant future at meetings in the Barents Regional Council can be held. Thank you for your attention, and thank you for this initiative to Chibis for this arrangement. Thank you.
thank you very much, Björn Ingemo, for a very detailed account of the situation in the Troms and Finnmark County, and for being optimistic about physical meetings. I do believe that all participants of the session do share that optimism and are working on bringing this situation closer. And we now get back to Russia, to the Republic of Komi, and see what the situation is like there. And we would like to give the floor to Deputy Chair of the Governor of Komi, Larisa Karachova.
Good afternoon, dear participants of the session. Thank you for the invitation to take part. In the Komi Republic, the incidence is declining. Gradually, the restrictions are lifted, and we believe that's a good and positive mechanism to reduce the incidence and to treat the patients is to arrange outpatient COVID stations that received a large number of patients, and free of charge taxi service was arranged, so people with suspicion of COVID or the contact persons of patients could call a taxi free of charge to come to these outpatient centers or stations to receive consultants or assistance, and further patients at home are provided medical consultations also remotely. Also medical treatment is provided, and all of that helped us reduce the waiting time, also including house calls and instrumental testing to segregate the streams of patients and generally to enhance the satisfaction of medical help. Currently, major resources are focused to vaccination. Already 29.8 thousand people have been vaccinated, but this is just 8% of the population that is supposed to be vaccinated. So we have a very ambitious task. 60% of the adult population. Initially, we made a focus on the risk groups. These are medical workers, teachers, social workers, and people living in social welfare institutions. We are somewhat behind in the scale of vaccination from the national average, because initially it was important to ensure the special storage conditions for the vaccines, but currently these conditions are created. We have 25 mobile vaccination stations and 109 vaccination teams. Even during weekends and holidays, transfer for people living in remote areas is arranged. Large-scale information campaign is arranged to promote vaccination, and resources of insurance companies are used to use SMS invitations for vaccination. All of these measures, as we hope, will help us to meet the dates and to manage the task. Thank you very much again, dear Andrey Chibis, for the invitation to take part. Thank you, Larisa, for sharing the experience, what is going on in your region. We wish you all of the ambitious tasks could be managed in the Republic of Komi, and we are moving on. And now we would like to grant the floor to Pentti Malinen, the governor of Kainu, Finland. Mr. Pentti Malinen, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. I also thank for the invitation to this COVID meeting that is also important for us. And because we have two colleagues from Finland already telling something, I would not repeat their numbers, etc. I will take a little bit more look on the general situation in Finland, and then some lessons and the basic situation in our region. Because Mika Riipit told that there is some need of coordination on regional level. I think it refers that we in Finland, we have at least 4 levels of decision making. One is state that is making some legislation and acts that are applied in the whole country. For example, the closing of restaurants is something that and very last action that is taken in most of the country. Then there is 5 state administrative regions. They take also decisions, for example, on the public events and their restrictions and police actions, etc. Then there is 20 central hospital regions that are very important in making the regional actions, vaccinations, for example, and coordination of the local hospitals and municipalities. Municipalities also can have close their and manage their own premises and schools, like primary schools. And in Finland, we have a idea of hybrid model. That means that we have classified regions according to the COVID situation in 3 different levels, basic level, etc. And the restrictions are the more restrictive, the more serious the situation is, and that we can change the situation by the certain criteria. By this criteria, Kainuu has always been one of the easiest and example of quite successful region. And I think there is one simple explanation that I would share with you, because it's also there is much work that can be done on regional level when there is a good coordination within the region, especially the central hospitals and all the other players. What has succeeded in Kainuu is very fast and well-targeted actions in the field. This means that we have our hospital has concentrated on enough testing, and preferably very quick tests, so that the response time is in minutes and hours, not in days like in many parts of Finland, or so is at the moment. That means that we have to have enough resources for tracing the affected people, and then make the decisions very quickly for quarantines, isolations, and further distance. This has cut very effectively the change of virus, so that most of the time Kainuu has not been in epidemic phase in the real. There has been some groups or some certain places where it has been discovered. There are also the same kind of risk places like in everywhere. The big workplaces, construction sites, especially when they have foreign workforce, etc. But these very quick and fast targeted actions are key. And when we succeed to restrict the virus to influence, then also the economic situation, economic consequences are a little bit better to cope. We have also, of course, some special consequences, because stop now. I also mentioned that our airport has been closed last year. It was half a year totally closed. now it's 2 flights per week, and we hope to get more regular state-paid traffic in the end of this year. But this means that if we don't can have a good exit strategy and stop the virus, there may be very significant consequences in the regional economy. For example, if our national flights are still under question. I will thank you again. I will take my time and listen. Very interesting to hear your contributions also. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pentti Malinen. You've told us about the situation in the Finnish region of Kainuu, and we will now move to another region of Finland, and it will be North Karelia. So, Markus Hirvonen, the governor of North Karelia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, dear colleagues and friends, and thank you for this meeting. And greetings from North Karelia. My name is Markus Hirvonen, and I started as a region mayor at the beginning of this year. Now I would like to tell you shortly pandemic situation in our region. North Karelia has survived well in sanitary sense. The situation in North Karelia has worsened in the recent weeks. New infections have come with tourists, and the virus has started to spread again. There is an average of 10 new cases a day here, but the challenge is virus variants. Almost all cases are in the region's capital, Joensuu. In total, there have been about 600 infections in the area during the epidemic. Infections are now coming especially to young people. The proportion of people under 30 has increased, and the proportion of people over 60 has decreased. There are 200 people in quarantine and only 1 in hospital in North Karelia. Testing on the area is very active. 2,800 samples are taken weekly. Sampling takes place at the health station and in the wards of the central hospital. In addition, a private company takes samples at the Niirala border crossing point. Almost everyone crossing the border is tested. There is little passenger traffic at the border, but freight traffic operates normally. Several bans and recommendations have now been imposed here. The Finnish government closed all restaurants in North Karelia on Monday. They can sell food if the person fetches the food themselves. Now restaurants are not allowed to sell alcohol at all, and the cafes are also closed. The decision has now been made for 3 weeks. Adult group exercise is prohibited and gym closures are being considered. The use of face mask is recommended in workplaces, public indoor spaces, and other occasions when several people work and stay in the same space. Events cannot be held now. The big and small festivals on the summer will decide in the coming days whether they will continue the preparation. We don't know yet if we can celebrate our province's birthday in August. The vaccination situation is awkward. The problem is availability of vaccines. About 25,000 people in the region have been vaccinated, and nearly 1,040 people are still without vaccination. The availability of vaccines has improved slightly, and the future is hopeful. We hope to have the whole population will be vaccinated by midsummer. The order of vaccination is causing controversy in Finland. There is now an order in which medical staff first receive vaccination. People from different risk groups are then vaccinated around the country. North Karelia believes that this vaccination order is correct. Despite the difficult situation, we are looking forward to the future. After the epidemic, we have a lot to do to get Finland and the world back to their feet again. That requires international cooperation, like this meeting. Thank you for attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Markus Hirvonen, for the detailed account of what goes on in North Karelia. And you mentioned words like hope and optimism 2 or 3 times, and we all share this optimism. Thank you very much. And now we grant the floor to Lars Georg Furdal, the head of Norwegian Barents Secretariat.
Thank you, Yuri. Dear colleagues, dear friends, thank you to Governor Chibis for taking initiative to this meeting. As Björn Inge Mo already mentioned, the corona situation on everyday life in our region, I will talk mostly about how it has been possible to have some kind of international cooperation in this time of corona pandemic and closed borders. Because open borders and frequent meetings have always been important for the good neighborhood in the Barents region. And the main task of the Norwegian Barents Secretariat is to develop good Norwegian-Russian relations and cooperation. During the pandemic, we have become used to work in new ways. The screen and the camera are no more important tools than ever. And I will quote a speaker from the Kirkenes conference this year. The Barents cooperation is generally acknowledged as the most successful dialogue format in Northern Europe that has demonstrated stable resilience to political fluctuations. A reason for this is a well-developed regional tradition of mutual assistance and good neighborliness, as well as an unprecedentedly high level of cross-border ties. These were the words of Sergei Lavrov when he spoke to the digital Kirkenes conference last month. And we got 4 ministers of foreign affairs to attend this conference digitally this year. This was not by coincidence. It was the result of coordination and dialogue within the established structures of the Barents Cooperation, especially the Norwegian chairmanship and the Barents Euro-Arctic Committee of senior officials. The established structures of the Barents Cooperation, with its rotating national and oblast level chairmanships, is a tool for us all. These Barents structures are a link to a more international cooperation between neighbors. And we see that dialogue is a tool to develop more activity in our Arctic, and a very important tool when we are going to rebuild after Corona, when we are going to develop and to live in the north. One example is that we, the Norwegian Barents Secretariat, use the Barents cooperation structures, as we know, try to realize an electric shuttle between Kirkenes, Nikel and Zapoljarny. I hope such an electric border shuttle will start a test run late this year or early next year, when the borders open. We share borders and we have a common history. And last week, we gave financial support to the Narvik Center. This is a Norwegian center of war history. As we speak, history experts from Norway and Russia work together to plan the construction of a monument that will remember and honor Russian prisoners of war in occupied Norway. Based on a digital cooperation, a physical monument to our common history will soon be built between Narvik and Bodø. I hope we can welcome our Russian friends to the opening of this monument in some months. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lars Georg Fordal, the head of the Norwegian Barents Secretariat. Finished this part of our discussion, and we move on to the third part of our session, and it will be dedicated to developing our cooperation. It's an open discussion. Just to remember that if you have any proposals, if you want to speak, you can use the option of raising your hand, and I can then give you the floor. But I know that we already have a proposal from the governor of the Murmansk region, Andrey Chibis, in terms of cooperation development. So,
thank you very much, dear colleagues and friends, for the interesting talk and discussion. Obviously, everybody can't wait physically meet and talk, especially young people who are the most energetic ones. And I would like to make a suggestion or proposal to all of you when the situation stabilizes after active vaccination, as I can hear from the partners. On the 26th, 27th of June this year, we would like to have an international Arctic Youth Forum of the Barents region. It will be the Polar Day, the Midnight Sun season, and all the events can take around the clock. And tourism, environment, ecology, sports, culture, everything that can be interesting to the young people, anything that can promote the world, the Arctic, the Barents region, and to improve these links, especially among our young people. I would like to propose this. Of course, considering the restrictions that have been imposed and are in force still in many of the regions, of course, we will consider a hybrid format, including the online participation format, but we will be glad and appreciate participation of representatives of the youth physically. So this is my proposal, and I expect and hope for your support. Again, on June 26, 27, the Day of the Young People in Russia, and this is the celebration that we would like to arrange this Barents Youth Forum, bringing together many guests from Russia, and also we would be happy if you can participate. The Polar Day, Midnight Sun season, 24 hours. Thank you very much, Mr. Chibis. That's a very interesting proposal. I think 24 hours on the Polar Day could be a very bright, interesting event for the young people, not only in Russia, but also for our friends from Finland, Sweden, and Norway. And we hope that the situation will allow that, and physically or otherwise, we have the online format as well, and we can combine these participating dear participants. I do not see any hands, but maybe you have any kind of proposals from your side or comments on what Andrey Chibis has proposed, maybe in development of this idea. Any suggestions or ideas? I cannot see any hands so far. But as we say, silence is the sign of agreement. So hopefully you approve this idea. And especially important it is that young people can participate, because I think this is a very symbolic thing. We understand that the coronavirus situation that has affected everyone will be managed by people, and we can see already good positive trends, and young people will go forward and they will be promoting our cooperation. Dear participants, we are on our schedule and we are close to concluding our meeting. And on my behalf, I would like to thank everyone who made interesting speeches and told about the situations at home in their counties, provinces, and regions. And I believe that such meetings are not only giving more information, but also give an opportunity, at least through the screen of the laptop, to see each other's faces and tell about our feelings, how we miss each other, how we miss physical communicating, and we would like to do anything to bring together these meetings. I would like to grant the floor to Governor of Murmansk region, the initiator of today's session. Mr. Chibis, your concluding remarks on today's event.
I believe Lars Georg Fordal raised his hand, didn't he? Oh, let us give the floor to Lars.
Yes, thank you very much for noticing. I just want to appreciate my support for the idea of Governor Chibis. And I think that it could be very useful for the established Barents Regional Youth Council, the BRIC, maybe to cooperate and to develop such a polar day. Anyway, I support the initiative, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lars. Anyone else wanted to approve of this proposal? Anyway, we keep in touch. We have many ways to maintain our communication. I assume that the proposal of Mr. Chibis has been approved. Sorry for some technical interruption. And thanks very much to Lars for the support of Andrey Chibis's proposal. So, dear friends, we remain connected. There are ways to continue keeping in touch. Please share your proposals with us, and I would like to give the floor to Governor Chibis for concluding remarks. First of all, I would like to thank our excellent moderator, Yuri Yerofeev. Of course, I'm very thankful to all of our Barents friends, to all my colleagues who have attended this session, because for me and my colleagues, it is very important to listen about what decisions have been made, what the situation is. And I believe that we are taking different decisions based on what I heard. For example, wearing masks in public transportation, in closed public spaces is mandatory in our region. It's not a recommendation. But on the other hand, we are more soft on small and medium-sized businesses in the service sector. Basically, we were very strict last spring in order to be able to have our healthcare services ready. So once we had a sufficient number of COVID beds, and we learned to treat the complications. We didn't introduce any further restrictions, and we were lifting them on the. So we are trying to keep a balance between the social well-being, especially given that our people live in a very harsh climate in autumn and in winter. So we made sure that we had amusement and entertainment for people available outdoor. Just recently we had our Polo Olympics, the Festival of the North. It had a lot of sports competitions, but its highlight was a large ski marathon, and we had participants from 9 countries. So it was both professional athletes and amateur skiers, and we believe that we've taken a sensible approach in our region. So we've given people the possibility to breathe, given the restrictions we had with mask wearing and disinfections, but we still were able to give people more or less an opportunity to live a full life. And on the regional level, we had the authority to introduce or lift the restrictions. Of course, there are federal regulations, but as a rule, they are recommendations, and the responsibility is with the governors, and it's up to us to make the decisions in the situation, because of course the situation in the north and in the south is very different. So I've listened to your presentations, and I'm happy to see the vaccinations going on in other regions, and this is a reason for us to be optimistic that soon we will be able to move from online to offline, to seeing each other in person. So in conclusion, I would like to thank all of you and wish good health to you and your teams, and to the people living in your regions, in your areas. And I do hope that in the course of the summer, we will all be able to meet, and maybe you and your representatives will be able to attend our International Youth Arctic Forum in June. And in May, I invite all of you to the 3rd Russian-Finnish Cross-Border Cooperation Days. They will be held on the 20th and 21st of May, and it will be still digital. But I do hope that we'll be able to meet in person in June. And once again, thank you and good health to all of you. Thank you very much, Andrey Vladimirovich. So I think we should wave a symbolic goodbye to each other in order to look to the future with optimism and seeing each other in person. And of course, the most important thing is take care of yourselves and stay in good health. Thank you.